Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make dark techno like Boston 168. So, as usual, you can get the project file and the samples from this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because they'll be available shortly. Let's get started. So we're at 130 BPM, and the first sound I have here is the kick, which sounds like this. And so the way that I made this was pretty straightforward. It's just like your kind of standard sort of like techno rumble kick. Basically, I started with this sample, just like a really punchy kick, and then what I've got going on here is you can see I have this going into this audio effect rack. So what we're doing with this is I've just got a dry chain. Matter of fact, I'll name these for you really quick. Dry, and then a wet chain. And what's happening is the dry chain, completely dry as you would imagine, and then on the wet chain we have three things. First, we have this reverb. So this is what's giving us sort of like the reverb in the reverb kick. You can see that's 100% wet because this is the wet chain. After that, we've got this amp, which you can hear is just taking the reverb and kind of like making it more intense. You can hear also what's happening here is if you listen to the low end before the amp, and then after the amp, you can hear there's a lot more like rumbliness to it. And so that is the purpose of this. So then after that, what we have is we have this auto filter, which sounds like this. And so if you do those three things and then layer it underneath the dry signal, like I said, in this audio effect rack here, or you could even just have like two separate tracks if you wanted to do it that way. But once you do all that, there you go, you get this kind of kick. So for Boston 168 sound, again, like they don't really have like the hardest kicks. Like it's not like, you know, like one of those harder tracks you would hear that has like, you know, the really, really thumping kicks that just like, you know, shake your entire body. But it's more like subtle and kind of more nuanced. And so that's kind of what I was going for here. So then after this, we have this drum bus. And what this is doing is it's just kind of beefing it up a little bit. Although you don't want to have like the hardest of all hard techno kicks in this style of stuff, you still need it to like punch through the mix. So that's the purpose of this. Here's without it. And then with it, you can hear it's just taking it and just giving it that extra little bit of punch. So it's still got like a lot of presence in the mix. Again, even though this is going to be a more subtle, kind of like chill kick sound, you still want it to like really punch through. Then after that, the last thing I have on here is just this EQ8. And with this, I'm just boosting a little bit of low end and then also cutting around like 200 hertz, like right basically at 200 hertz. Because that's where kind of like a lot of the boxy frequencies are. Like if I start turning this up, like those kind of frequencies. So I'm just cutting that a little bit. You can see I've got a tight Q on that EQ band. And that's it for the kick. So the next thing that we have here is this clap, which sounds like this. This is really simple. If I play it for you with the kick, you'll hear it. It's just a little clap, and it's just kind of adding some extra little stuff at the end of every bar. It's kind of like punctuation, you know? It's like when you're writing a sentence, you don't just have like the words. You have to have extra things in there to kind of like bring it to life and give it more, just kind of more depth. And that's what this is doing. It's just adding some extra little percussion there to kind of go into each new bar. So the way I did this, really simple. It's just like a clap, and then I've got this ping pong delay doing 16th notes on it. And this is something I heard in a lot of Boston 168's music, so I wanted to include it in this. Next thing I have here is these two hi-hats, which sound like this. Or are these two hi-hats? So basically what these are hi-hats made using actually synthesis. So what I've got here is you can see I've got some white noise. These are both just some white noise. And then it's going into a bandpass filter. So on this first one, you can see I've got a little bit of an attack. This is kind of like as opposed to that. This one's more of like a shaker. But yeah, I've just got that, and then we put the bandpass on, and there you go, that kind of shapes it. And then after that, the second one sounds like this. As this one, same thing, just some white noise. This one doesn't have that attack, so it's a little bit sharper. And then it's just going into a bandpass. And yeah, these kind of hi-hats are really simple, but it's really good for techno because you can make like your own hi-hats. Like you can hear like these are literally the same thing, white noise and a bandpass filter, but they sound worlds apart from each other. Or like very different. And this is because this is just such a powerful way of making hi-hats. You have a lot of control over how they sound, and you can do a lot of stuff. So then I've got all that percussion I just showed you, the clap and then the 2 hi-hats in a group, and we've got a little bit of processing on the group. So here is with nothing, and then with everything. So you can hear this just kind of takes it and kind of like brings it to life more. It's kind of like how I had the drum rack on the kick. Like if you remember what that sounded like without it versus with it. It's a big difference, and it really helps to kind of like take it and just give it that extra little oomph that you need in your track. So that's what I'm doing here. So you can see, I'll just kind of take these off and do it one by one. So the first thing we have is the drum bus. Here's without it, and then with it. So you can hear this is just adding that sort of little bit of like crunch and kind of texture over top of everything, and just bringing it forward in the mix a little bit more. It's almost like this is what I feel like takes it from like raw audio and kind of like brings it into the track. So then after this, I have a compressor. And what we're doing with this is not really much, to be honest with you. So you can see and hear, it's just really activating on the peaks. I have the threshold set to like there. And it's just kind of giving that little bit of gel to everything and sort of like bringing it closer together. Again, here's without it. And then with it. It just feels a lot more cohesive with it. The last thing I have on here is just this EQ8, which is cutting on some lawn. Really simple. You probably don't even notice it. But you can see that clap does have a little bit of lawn. And I like to just do this on percussion buses like this. So the next thing that we have here is a little bit of noise. We have this kind of like 2 layers here. So we have this one, which is more of like an effect, and then this one, which is like some background noise. So on the first one, which sounds like this, what this is doing is basically just playing this one little note, that little that you hear there, and it's just kind of happening every 2 bars. And the way that I made this was actually kind of similar to how I did the hi-hats. So what we've got here is you can see I've got some white noise, and then this is going into a bandpass filter. I did this with the auto filter with this one. It doesn't really matter which one you use, it's just what I feel like using in the moment. But I've got that going into a bandpass filter, and then after that I have a bit of distortion with this amp. So if I show it to you without the amp, and then with it, you can hear this is what's really doing it. Basically, you put it, the white noise, into the bandpass filter, which kind of shapes it. You know, it takes it from this to this, and kind of focuses it on a certain range. And then when you have just basically a bunch of noise in that frequency range, you distort it with the amp, and it gives you that really cool kind of sound. And you can actually do like a lot with this too. Like if you want to turn up the resonance more, you can hear, you almost get like a tone. Like it's a nice way to make these kind of more industrial kind of sounds. And this is something I heard in a lot of Boston 168's music as well. So I want to show you how to do it, because it can seem kind of weird and like hard to figure out, but it's not really that difficult. So then after that, I've got this chorus, which you can see is just set like this. It's just giving it a little bit more stereo width. Here's without it, and then with it, as well as kind of like you can hear adding a little bit more shine to the sound. After that, we have this echo, which is just doing 1/8 notes. Pretty simple stuff there. And then finally, I just have an EQ8, which is just kind of like enhancing what the bandpass is doing. Here's without it, and then with it. The thing is that even though we do have this bandpass, the distortion just adds a lot. So it's nice to have something like this that's just kind of cleaning it up. So that's the first noise. The second one is this one, which is just some vinyl noise. You can hear it's playing in the background throughout the track. I've got it high passed a little bit. This is a nice way to add some atmosphere. I heard this in a lot of Boston 168's music as well. It really helps to give it that kind of like darker, more sort of like textured feel. So then after that, we have this little FM stab, which sounds like this. So what's going on here is basically I have this little sound which I made with operator. It's just playing one note. It's just playing F. That's the key we're in, F minor. And this is kind of like somewhere between percussive and rhythmic, or sort of somewhere between a melodic sound and a percussive or a more rhythmic one. So basically what I've got here, as you can see, I've got these 3 sine waves in here, an operator, just doing some FM. You can see I've got the chorus pitches kind of set at different points. And then I have those going into this low pass filter. So what's going on here, as you can see, I've just got a bit of an envelope on there. Here's without it. And then with it, it's subtle, but it makes it a little bit darker sounding and a little bit more, yeah, just kind of like deep. After that, we have this echo, just doing dotted 1/8 notes. Pretty simple stuff there. The echo is pretty important for this though. It definitely adds to like the rhythm. If I turn it off, it just doesn't have as much flow. Like, it doesn't feel as fluid and as alive as it does with the echo. After that, we've got a bit of reverb, pretty simple stuff. Then we have this OTT, and what I'm doing with OTT, if you don't know, OTT is a preset for Ableton's multiband dynamics. You can find it right here. If you have any version of Ableton, should have it. But basically what I'm doing with this is I'm just using this to kind of like blow out the sound. Here's without it. You can hear it just has that very like clean synthy kind of sound, and then with it, it's a lot more textured and a lot more alive sounding. So the key to this is just this time. If you have OTT by default, what happens is it's like really extreme compression. Basically, OTT stands for over the top. It's this really crazy multiband compression that just grabs all the little frequencies that aren't quite as loud as like the main sort of like characteristic frequencies of your sound and pulls them up. And what happens with this is it can really mess with like your reverb and your delay. Like if I hit play right now, you can hear it, they're all crazy. So if we turn this time all the way up, there we go, it doesn't do that. And then I just had the amount down a little bit as well. And then the last thing that we have on here is just a little bit of drum bus. So I'm just using this to kind of beef up the sound a little bit more at the end of the chain. Here's without it, and then with it. So yeah, you can hear this just takes it and gives it a bit more texture and makes it really a lot more powerful in the mix. The next thing we have here is this ARP, which sounds like this. This is playing this pretty simple little melody in F minor. That's the key we're in, like I said. It's really not too crazy. It's just kind of following notes in the chords. Like we have F here, for example. And then we've got a G sharp, which, if you know, is in the F minor chord. Then we have a C, which is also in the F minor chord. We got another F up there. I guess there's a C sharp, but that's just the fifth, which is, yeah, C. That's just the fifth, one note up. Nothing too crazy. Another G sharp. You know, it's really not anything too difficult. But it's just kind of provides some nice musicality, because for this style, you don't want it to be entirely like dark and industrial. Like just this on its own kind of feels like a very different song. But when we add this little ARP in, it kind of adds something nice and more smooth to the sound, and just something, you know, just kind of brings in a little bit more musicality. So the way that I made this sound was using analog. What we've got here is we've got two square waves. You can see the first one is an octave up, and this is going into a low pass filter. Pretty simple stuff. It's just like a pluck. After that, we've got just a bit of vibrato, and that is it for inside of analog. So the next thing that we have here is just a bit of echo. You can see it's doing dotted eighth notes. Yeah, just like with the stab. You can hear the echo is pretty important for making this sound really cool. Like without it, it just feels very clean and dry. Then after that, we just got a bit of reverb. Pretty self-explanatory. You can see the dry wet is kind of low. You don't really need a whole lot with this kind of sound. Then we have a drum bus, which I'm also using to beef this one up, just like with the stab. Here's without it. And then with it, you can hear it just takes it and gives it that extra little, like, kind of fatness that you really need with a lead like this. And then the last thing we have on here is just an EQ8 cutting out the low end. Really simple. Just cleans it up at the end of the chain. Then the last layer that we have here is this little string, which sounds like this. This is actually really simple. It's just basically like a drone. I have it coming in halfway through this loop. This is like something where, you know, maybe you would have it kind of coming in and out throughout the track. Like you have part of the track without it, and then it comes in at some point. And you're just kind of playing with that dynamic. But basically, what's happening here is it's just playing F and then G sharp. So just notes from an F minor chord, F and G sharp, yeah. Really nothing too crazy there. And the sound is also really simple on this one. So all this is just a saw wave going into a bandpass filter. You can see it's set like that. We got a little bit of vibrato at the end of the chain. And then I just have a little bit of reverb. Nothing really too crazy there. And then I have this auto pan, which is doing kind of like a fake sidechain. So if you try to sidechain something to this kick, it's got a lot of decay, so it's going to sound kind of weird. So I'm just using this to kind of simulate what a sidechain would do. Basically, I've just got the phase on 0, so it's only affecting the volume of the mono signal as opposed to the left and right channels. And then, yeah, you can see I've just got this on quarter notes. I've got the saw wave, and it's inverted, so it's kind of like going up like that. And there we go. We have like a nice kind of sidechaining sound without having to sidechain into this super booming kick. So So yeah, so that is pretty much it for this one. I just want to show you guys some techniques that I picked up on listening to Boston 168's music. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed very much. As usual, you can get the project file and the samples from this video in the description. Make sure to check that out. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check that because they'll be available shortly. Thank you so much, everybody. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. That is it for today. And I will see you guys again tomorrow with another video.